I hope everyone's doing well. I think we're all quite tuned into precipitation, and we are getting some throughout the state, which is a good thing. And this month's meeting, we are transitioning over to our waste diversion sector, and so we really have a nice meeting ahead of us. I am Michelle Stewart, Executive Director of Western Resilience Center, and it's my pleasure to convene this month's meeting, which is a timely and important discussion on recycling, waste diversion, and one of the policy tools that communities across Colorado are increasingly employing to increase residential recycling, which is pay-as-you-throw or volume-based pricing. So by the end of this meeting, you'll all be really familiar with what those are. But as we'll hear today, this is a discussion for City of Steamboat Springs, and it's a great opportunity. So Western Resilience Center was established as a nonprofit in 2009, and we are guided by the mission to serve as a leader, resource, and catalyst for building a sustainable and resilient Yampa Valley region. These topic-focused monthly community meetings are designed to convene leaders, program partners, and community members for presentations and discussions on key issues and initiatives so that we can learn together, ask questions, connect, and find ways to meaningfully contribute to the sustainable and resilient future we need. In just a moment, I will pass the floor to Caitlin Farkas, Western Resilience Center's Waste Diversion Projects Manager, who is going to be introducing today's meeting and our speakers. Before I transition to Caitlin, I'll just briefly mention that today's meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available after the meeting at Western Resilience Center's YouTube channel, and all registered attendees will receive an email with a link to the recording when it's available. Today's meeting will center around our speaker presentations, and we should have about 15 minutes or so for a Q&A after. If you have questions while our speakers are presenting, please do put your questions in the chat, and then I can ask them during the Q&A. Otherwise, we can also do the various raising of hands either physically or use the little icons on your computer, and then we can call on you too during the Q&A if you'd like to ask your question yourself. Please do know that we want to acknowledge that Western Resilience Center does reserve the right to remove any content in the chat, but I am assured that that's not going to be the case today. And then please do remember to keep your microphones on mute when you're not speaking. So now it is my great pleasure to welcome Caitlin Farkas, Waste Diversion Projects Manager with Western Resilience Center, to the floor, who will be introducing today's focus and speakers. To you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's discussion. Recognizing that both recycling and composting are climate solutions, we at Western Resilience Center are very supportive of the city's current exploration of the volume-based pricing ordinance, which is an important step towards increasing both recycling and composting in time because the proven strategy incentivizes and rewards households that use smaller trash bins. In a volume-based pricing trash and recycling system, the price of a home's trash service is based directly on the amount of trash produced. The recycling container maintains the same size. A key win of this program is that smaller trash bins cost less than larger trash bins. It presents an opportunity for households to be incentivized to recycle and compost more, trash less, and opt for a smaller bin for the win. Today, we will learn more about pay-as-you-throw implementation in Summit County communities, as well as the consideration of pay-as-you-throw locally. First, we will hear from Jen Schenk, the Executive Director for High Country Conservation Center based in Summit County, Colorado. Before transitioning to her leadership role in the nonprofit sector, Jen spent nearly 15 years at Copper Mountain, where she honed her expertise in environmental management and strategic marketing. She is a firm believer that collective community-level efforts serve as a powerful catalyst for environmental protection. Jen's professional dedication centers on advancing local climate solutions, energy efficiency, and zero waste programs. She holds a bachelor's in biology from Florida State and a master's in environmental policy and management from the University of Denver. When she isn't championing sustainability initiatives, Jen enjoys telemarketing, mountain biking, and making memories with her family in Summit County. Jen has kindly agreed to join us today to share information about Summit County's pay-as-you-throw implementation, what worked, what they learned, and what other mountain communities should know. Following Jen, we will hear from Alicia Archibald, the City of Steamboat Springs Recycling Coordinator. Alicia has been working with the City of Steamboat Springs since 2022 and brings over 25 years of professional experience working across the waste sector to her work here on the ground locally in Steamboat Springs. Her extensive professional background includes serving as the executive director for multiple environmental nonprofits, where she focused on community-level advocacy and protection, founder and consultant for Better Recycling, which specialized in electronics recycling and materials management, Sustainability Planner for Fort Carson, advancing large-scale institutional efforts in resource efficiency, General Manager for a transfer station, managing the logistical realities of landfill diversion, and she continues to work part-time as a satellite coordinator for Circular Colorado. Outside of her professional work, Alicia is a very talented singer and guitarist, and she joins us today to talk about Steamboat's current recycling rates, exploration of pay-as-you-throw, and what these conversations could mean for Steamboat Springs city residents. It is my pleasure to welcome Jen Schenk as our first speaker, so I will turn it over to you, Jen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. Just gonna do the screen, PowerPoint. Okay, looking good, I think. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And Alicia, your bio, I mean, it makes me feel lazy. So you've done so much. Alicia and I have worked together for a number of years, actually. She was a consultant on a project here in Summit County along the way. My slides aren't advancing, so I need to fix that. Good grief. Why? See, Caitlin, we didn't test that. Stand by. Let me try this again here. Oh, okay. Good grief. Okay. All right. Sorry, y'all. Thank you. So, as Caitlin said, and Michelle.
Wait, Jen, sorry, but it's not shared.
Oh, you're kidding.
No.
Oh, thank you.
But you know what? What we've all learned is how nimble we can be with technology.
I mean,
it's like the most stressful stressor. So you're doing great.
It's just not that hard. It shouldn't be that hard. So
I know. I feel like it's the wrinkle that shows up.
Always. All right. I'm just going to share my screen so you might see us all for a second. And then, are you guys seeing slides now?
Yep, we've got it
there
now.
you go.
Okay. I know, but this is where I was before. Okay.
It's advancing though. We're seeing it.
Thanks, y'all.
Yep.
Okay. So High Country Conservation Center, we are a Summit County based nonprofit. And as it relates to recycling and waste diversion, we are the nonprofit partner for Summit County government for all education and outreach. And just to give you guys the lay of the land in Summit, Summit County government owns and operates our local landfill. They also have an entire campus up at the landfill that has a large composting pad, recycling processing facility or MRF, and a recycling drop site. And then, like I said, we do all the education and outreach. We are also very fortunate that in Summit County, we have about $2 million a year that is funding from a mill levy that was passed back in 2018 that funds our recycling programs. So not only the work that we do at HC3, but any of the recycling operations, programs, expanded needs. So we do have that funding that we are working with, and it has helped dramatically in this implementation of pay-as-you-throw. And then just a quick sidebar, much like Western Resilience Center, our organization HC3 does much more than just waste reduction. So we work in climate action, energy efficiency, and water conservation as well. In terms of our community-wide diversion goals, we only have one stated goal. We're working really hard to extend the life of the landfill. We have a climate action plan that I discussed a lot in our community meetings when we started to consider pay-as-you-throw, but our stated goal is on the screen to increase our overall diversion to 40% by 2032. We're currently at 23% in our overall diversion, and in our municipal solid waste diversion, we're at 32%. So that's really a better place to measure the impacts of recycling and composting by residents. So we're at 32% MSW rate. In terms of pay-as-you-throw and universal recycling, that's my focus today, is to talk about pay-as-you-throw. Same thing as volume-based pricing, we just call it pay-as-you-throw. So we have 5 kind of major towns in Summit County that are incorporated, as well as unincorporated Summit County. Unincorporated Summit County has about half of our residents. And so in 2023, Frisco and Breckenridge adopted pay-as-you-throw. And then in 2025, our Board of County Commissioners adopted pay-as-you-throw, which meant it went into effect for unincorporated Summit County. So we now have roughly like almost about 2/3 of the residents in Summit County have access to pay as you throw under the ordinance. One of our haulers actually decided in 25 to go completely pay as you throw pricing. So roughly 75% of our residents in Summit County who have curbside have access to pay as you throw, because there's this one hauler it's Waste Management who's doing that across the board. So universal recycling, you all already have that in Steamboat. That's the program that requires recycling for larger homeowners associations and businesses. But when we did this in Summit County, our ordinances, universal recycling and pay as you throw, were all wrapped into one. I'm not going to talk about this final thing on the slide, but I guess just for anyone who wants to geek out, city council members and so on other ordinances we have in effect. We have flow control and hauler licensing in Summit County as well. I guess before I talk about this slide, I know Michelle has asked me, like, just, hey, how's it going? Like, how's it going in Summit County in general? And my general experience, having been through this twice, 2 different rollouts, is that it seems to be there's like kind of this 6-month to almost a year kind of challenging period, right? Like during the actual rollout, like the few months before and then the few months right after, like every resident doesn't always get the same information, and people are confused, and they're calling us, they're calling the haulers, they're maybe calling elected officials. But it does seem like the programs mature pretty quickly. So I feel like in Frisco and Breck, residents are overall happy. I haven't had a single complaint since, that rolled out in the fall of 23. I don't think I've had a single complaint or heard anything about it since 6 months after it went into effect, just to give you an idea. Okay, now jumping into this slide. One thing we offer in Summit County with that strong future funding, this is not free. This is free to residents. It's not free to our government. It's a couple $100,000 program that we pay for. But for residents, we offer free food scrap collection, and we have 9 sites throughout the community where and we give people free little 3-gallon buckets, and they're able to go and drop off their food scraps that are then composted. This really gives people, I think it helps people downsize their bins. I know it does. So you can see our stats on here. We do have 3,000 residents enrolled. I do not believe all of those residents are currently active, but that's how many people are signed up in the free program. Okay, pay-as-you-throw pricing structure. This is how we do it in Summit. And this is a slide when we were doing our community meetings in Summit, where I was explaining how pay-as-you-throw works. I'm not going to do that. I know Caitlin talked about it. So there's an assumption that you all understand how pay-as-you-throw works, or I'm happy to answer questions, or Alicia can. But I think just kind of focusing on this bottom part, this pricing component. So in Summit County, the base price is that small size. And for most of our haulers, just 32 gallons. One of the haulers has 35, but that's not that important. So that base price is where you start. So all of the haulers serving residents in a curbside format have to have a small, medium, and trash, and then they have to have a recycling bin, and it's a bundled service. So the medium size has to be 80% greater or more than the small size. And then the large size has to be an additional 80%. So basically this medium size has to be like at least 1.8 of the base price. And the large size has to be 2.6 of the base price, the small. We didn't just make up that number. That's pretty common nationally speaking. When you look at programs, it's been well studied that you need to be at least 80 or 100% greater to offer enough incentive. Because if there's only like $5 in between these sizes, people aren't going to go through the effort of switching. Okay, and then this is our marketing campaign. We did spend a lot of money on our marketing campaign. I think in our first rollout in Frisco and Breckenridge alone, we spent about $150,000. So you can check this out. And then this is, again, exact same marketing campaign, different format. I think this is an Instagram something. We spent another $100,000 in 2025 rolling it out. So to the degree you can partner with other local governments and do it at the same time, it would have been much, much more cost effective for us to do this. And again, we're still missing a couple towns. We're missing Silverthorne and Dillon and Keystone. But so it goes. We're very fortunate we were able to get marketing out there to the community. In terms of government resources, our local governments have been able to offer grants to homeowners associations and businesses to help with signage and enclosures. I'm sure in Steamboat, I don't know what your code requirements look like, but I'm guessing you probably have to have some nice enclosures. In the town of Breckenridge, I mean, it's basically like a little mini house, like they're $100,000 enclosures and they have to have a roof. Some of the other towns have lesser requirements, but most of the towns and the county have been offering $10,000 grants to people who want to who need to build new enclosures to add recycling. And then for homeowners associations, especially those that have income qualified residents, like not short-term renters, but people earning like less than 150% AMI is our criteria. We can offer more. So like we gave a larger grant to a homeowners association last year that had pretty much like full-time locals and like 500 units for them to add recycling. We also offer technical assistance and on-site visits. So we'll go in sometimes with the town and the haulers, but we'll go on site, and you guys know this. Like every single HOA is going to have like a different setup for businesses, and it really just requires going on site and just like helping people brainstorm, and it's really, really appreciated. We also did have a pool of funds for income qualified residents, and the towns had different requirements for this. So like, and you can see my note that says we did not have any uptake for this program in any of the towns, which was surprising. I don't know exactly why. I mean, we tried to get the word out in Spanish too, but like the town of Breck had a requirement that if you downsized and you were still spending more, like if you downsized from a large to a medium and you were still spending more money, then you could apply. I don't think all the jurisdictions had that requirement in place. I think generally it was like if you're spending more money, then call us and we can try to like fund the difference in your bills for a period of time. Some of the jurisdictions were like 3 months, some were 6 months. It was never meant to be in perpetuity, but I don't think we gave out any of that money. I will say the other thing we did everywhere is we helped the haulers offer residents that bin exchanged for free one time. So like we didn't want a barrier of if somebody wanted to change from a large to a medium or a large to a small, and they didn't have recycling, then typically a hauler is going to charge a delivery fee. So our local governments did subsidize that so that residents were encouraged to downsize and to add that recycling. Some of our haulers don't charge those fees. So I think it's different by hauler and community, but we did do that, which residents really appreciated. So, okay, so how are we doing in terms of our metrics? So you can see our single stream tons right here for the like rolling 12-month period through Q1. I mean, we're literally flat, right, year over year. I mean, at first blush, this is a little bit disappointing since now we have pay-as-you-throw in effect across the majority of the county. But a few things are happening here that makes this not surprising to me. Number one, in fall 25, that's when pay-as-you-throw went into effect for unincorporated Summit County. And again, that's half our residents. I think it's too soon to see an impact for that, for unincorporated residents. We also have universal recycling. And again, that's the businesses and HOA requirement. That on-ramp is a lot longer. And so those requirements for businesses in unincorporated Summit County doesn't go into effect until 2027. So I think once we see a lot more HOAs and businesses recycling, I think our business is recycling. I think this is an HOA thing we're missing. And I know you guys already have this in Steamboat, so you're ahead of us. And then the other thing that was working against us this winter is probably exactly the same thing you all have in Steamboat, where I mean, our visitation was way, way, way down. So our trash tonnages and recycling volumes altogether were down in Summit County. So I was actually encouraged to see that single stream volumes were flat. Okay, so the rates. This is what's happened over the past few years. These are our current hauler rates for the 3 haulers I mentioned for curbside recycling for anyone who has pay as you throw. You can see that that base rate has become almost the same. So I'm making an assumption. I don't know. I don't work for a hauler or waste provider, but it seems to be this is where everyone has landed. So I assume that's the lowest they can go in Summit County for that small trash bin. And then if everyone's the same for that base rate because of the pricing ratio that we just talked about that's in the ordinance, it has to be at least 80% more. That's going to make the rest of the prices really, really similar. Alicia and I talked last week. I know your prices in Steamboat are substantially lower than this. In terms of what has happened with our rates in Summit County, here's the gist. If somebody had a large trash and recycling bin, curbside collection at their house before pay as you throw, they are absolutely paying more right now. Like 100% they're paying more. That's what we wanted to happen. That's the point of pay as you throw, is that people who are generating more trash should be paying more. Like you pay more on your power bills if you use more electricity than your neighbor. People who had a large trash and recycling bin before pay as you throw, who downsized to the medium, are saving a little bit. People who downsized to the small are saving a fair amount. People who had the medium trash bin, it goes both before pay as you throw, medium trash and recycling. It's a little bit of both. Like one of the haulers, you're saving some money. One of the haulers, like it's a few bucks more, but it's almost, I mean, it's almost the same. So that's what's happening with pricing. In terms of what sizes have people elected. So these are in our communities where we have pay as you throw offered. And you can see that in terms of small and medium, over half of our residents have elected small and medium bins. And in fact, in some of our towns that have had pay as you throw, like in Frisco and Breck, where pay as you throw has been in effect longer, these numbers actually look even better. Would I like that large number to be lower? Yes. However, in Summit County, we have more than, it's like close to 70% of our homes are unoccupied. So that's mostly short-term rentals, I should say. We actually want those bins to be large bins because it prevents, trash overflowing and neighbors complaining. So in a way, I think that the short-term rental owners and second homeowners are helping subsidize the costs for locals who are really able to downsize. In terms of successes, I'm not going to read all the things we just talked about. We've talked about marketing. We did a lot of coordination with haulers, so we timed our marketing when they were going out with messaging to their customers. We do something called oops tagging, where we go around and we like flip the lid on bins, recycling bins at the curb, and just give people like nice little notes if they're doing a great job, or just like a gentle like, hey, this looks good, but you included some plastic bags. Don't do that next time. And we've seen improvements. We'll go back to homes twice in a season, and the homes we hit twice, we're seeing recycling improvements. We talked about those grants we have for HOAs, the food scraps. Again, this final thing is just kind of a geeky, like, and for anyone on city council or Alicia, if you want to talk about the difference between doing something that's an admin rule that supplements an ordinance, but doesn't have to go back to elected officials if you want to change it. It's just some flexibility that has been really helpful for us. And then I think this is my final slide of things I could do differently. I think I would have done some things differently. You can see these all relate to haulers. It's been our results reporting has been a little challenging. We have been very fortunate that the haulers have voluntarily given us information like the bin sizes. But they don't have to. And then whatever other metrics you guys want to determine success, just really think through those. Um, the town of Breckenridge, the second bullet, the town of Breckenridge required the haulers to submit their pricing like 6 months in advance, and then they require the pricing every year from each hauler, what that pays you through pricing is going to be. And that really gave city council or our Breck town council, we call it, like 6 months to know, like, oh, hey, we adopted this ordinance, but this is what the prices are going to be for our residents. Like, does this look okay? Are we still good with it? So that was incredibly helpful. And then a lot of communication issues with the haulers to their customers, just a lot of inconsistent communication despite our best efforts. And I think I would work harder on that and write things into the ordinance to ask the haulers to communicate in a very, very specific way with marketing materials that we created in my ideal world. And that is my presentation. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Jen. We'll save questions until after Alicia's presentation. So Alicia, now I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Let's see if I can be successful in sharing my screen.
And I guess I'll say in the meantime as well, if you have any questions for Jen, maybe put them in the chat now so you don't forget them, and then we'll read them off during our Q&A.
You folks seeing my presentation there?
Yep.
The beautiful city of Steamboat Springs.
Yeah, we got it.
Cool. Well, I appreciate the introduction earlier. You covered a lot of what I was going to say, so I won't have to repeat that. One of the things I did want to add is that, I spend a lot of my time, just for those wondering, working in participation with different regional and statewide recycling networks, and then helping support the circular economy development. I do also work with the county and Western Resilience Center often. A lot of that is through the Climate Action Plan Waste Working Group. And that group really tries to develop strategies that'll help move the region towards reducing waste to landfill. But we also look into material reuse opportunities. So with that, I will move forward. So I want to start, I haven't given this update before, and so I thought it would be a good idea to look at what our climate action plan goal is, and then I'll give a little bit of information on what we've been doing since I've been at the city. So the goal, the climate action plan rather, was adopted by the city in 2021, and with the goal, as you can see, to reduce waste to landfill 46% by 2030 and 85% by 2050. And I think a lot of times, as Jen mentioned, we look at the MSW diversion, and I think if we're ever going to get to that goal, we're going to have to look larger and look at more industrial diversion as well. So with that, these are the 3 strategies that were identified when the Climate Action Plan goal was put together. And so reducing waste to landfill, increasing diversion, when those 2 are so similar. And so I think what the difference is diverting what we can, keeping it out of the landfill, but then also continuing to grow the programs that divert and maybe reuse materials. And then the third one, if you think about the statewide Plastic Pollution Prevention Act that was passed, that brought about bag fees statewide on banning plastic bags, but then continuing the bag fees for paper bags. That also rolled out Foam Free in the Boat. Was our campaign that basically focuses on reducing or removing foam to-go containers from restaurants and food service. So if you see any styrofoam food service containers leaving a restaurant, please let me know, because that shouldn't be happening. And then the last piece of that is, I believe it did pass the legislation this year, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the skip the stuff was the third piece to be added to that legislation. And so I think we'll learn more provided it got signed by the governor. I think we'll be seeing something like that coming forward. And skip the stuff means if you think of you get to go foods and they automatically fill your bag with straws, forks, knives, condiments, those things will need to be requested by the customer, or the restaurateur will need to ask the question if it's wanted. So instead of just automatically putting it in, that's what the skip the stuff is. So we should learn more about that soon. So some background of what we've done since we approved or adopted the goal. I'm not going to read all this to you. It's a lot of words, but I'll just kind of give you an overview. That study that was done in February of 2022 was an intense recycling study that came up with quite a few recommendations. And so what I wanted to show you was the timeline of how we've actually been rolling out those recommendations and working through them. And so there was already hauler licensing, but one of the recommendations was to increase the frequency of the hauler, the data that the haulers submit, which identifies the customer number, the tonnage of weight of the different types of materials that they collect. And again, all that would be increased. It was recommended that we do the commercial recycling and multifamily recycling ordinance, looking at special events. How do we increase recycling at events? And so, what about an incentive to help offset the cost of paying for food waste diversion or reducing waste to landfill through special events? Another recommendation was a comprehensive education and outreach program, an equal space policy. This one, I don't know that we've completely dug into this one yet, but it's basically, if you think of the community development code, when you are building out a development, you're planning a development. Now that we have this ordinance that you have to have recycling, especially in the commercial sector, how are you thinking through the footprint of the building and the property to make sure that you have proper room for recycling? Another recommendation was a regional drop-off, and we're excited that the Apex has opened up the Shift Center for hard to recycle materials in Steamboat. So that's been really cool. And then the last thing is, as we're talking today, volume-based pricing or pay-as-you-throw. So all of those were recommendations that came out of that initial study in 2022. So as you look at these dates, as you go down this slide, you can see how those have all been implemented and talked through. So it's been great, a lot of work. 2022 was a busy year. I'll just point out that in June of 2022, the Producer Responsibility Program for Statewide Recycling Act was passed, and we will see that start to come to fruition. The goal is this year, according to the act, they're to start rolling that program out in the state in June. And so we're not exactly sure of the exact timeline of when we will see free or the cost of recycling shifts from the resident in the first go around, from the resident to the producer of the paper and packaging manufacturer, the producers. And so that is to be rolled out coming up soon. They're going to start probably in communities that have contracted hauling in place, and then move on to the open market, which is what Steamboat is. So we're not sure if they're going to focus on the Front Range first or focus on the rural. A lot to be determined. It's coming soon. And so we should be able to realize some of those savings, hopefully before the end of the year, maybe third quarter. We'll see how that goes. But then the other dates that you see there are just kind of more implementation of different strategies to, again, reduce waste. But as we talk specifically to pay-as-you-throw, this was a topic that was brought up in January of 2023. There was a deep dive presentation to council, and really into what are all the components, everything that Jen just described. And the council then made the decision in a majority vote that they weren't ready to dive into that ordinance yet. And so let's just continue the conversation in the future. And so that's kind of what we're doing right now. July of last year, we started to talk about pay-as-you-throw with the newer council, second council from the first one, and did a deep dive. How do we get to volume-based pricing? Do we do it through an enhanced hauler license, or do we do it through a single hauler contract with the city? And it was determined at that time that, as is the case today, there's not enough competition in Steamboat to get a good, competitive bid process for an RFP to get to that single hauler contract. So the council said, let's go down the path of pursuing volume-based pricing as enhanced hauler license. And so with that, that's where we are in the conversation today. So what I want to do is give you a kind of an overview of where we are. 2025, I was able to do an analysis of what our diversion rate is, and I looked at all 4 quarters of the year. But I want to start by defining what the diversion rate, how it's calculated. And basically, as Jen indicated, the MSW, or Municipal Solid Waste Diversion Rate, that we use to really talk about how we're impacting, I would say, the general resident or the general commercial person, like think of commingled single stream recycling and food waste diversion. And so those two together, we look at the quarterly tonnages that are reported by the haulers. I add those 2 numbers together, and that total is divided by the total waste generated. And so that is how we get to our overall diversion rate. I broke it out into sectors so you could see how we're having success. Our residential sector, on average last year, diverted about 25% of the waste, which was really good when you look compared to the other sectors and the overall. The commercial recycling average on the commercial sector, roughly 10% diversion. To be fair, those wastes are generally heavier. There's a lot more industrial activity with that. Restaurants have more food waste, so obviously a lot of room for us to improve. And you probably are wondering, how come that diversion rate in that sector is so low if we have a 90% compliance with the recycling ordinance? The recycling ordinance said that any commercial or multifamily property using, let's say, dumpster service, because that's how we refer to commercial. For instance, they have a 6-yard trash dumpster service once a week. They have to then have the capacity to divert 50% recyclables once a week at 3 yards once a week. And so that would be that 50% capacity. And so that ordinance has been rolled out. We have seen 90% compliance. We are working on the compliance right now. We've, through code enforcement, working with some of the businesses. Some of the businesses identified they didn't generate that much, so they've applied for a waiver process, and some of those have been approved. Think a landscape company or a welder who just doesn't generate a lot. So maybe we reduce the amount that they're required to provide. But if you look overall, the construction and demolition average is very, very sad. And honestly, probably where we really need to be looking if we want to get to the goals of 46% or 85% diversion. A lot of opportunity there. But overall, the current diversion rate's at about 12% if you're looking at all those numbers in an aggregate. So where are we on our conversation? As Jen identified these different components, instead of calling it pay-as-you-throw, we're looking at calling it volume-based pricing. And it's just, it was in talking with the hauling companies, trying to find common ground as we try to do when we work on ordinances, getting the feedback. And this was a term that was recommended. And it's used in other communities as well. So we have the same types of components that Jen mentioned. It's going to be it would affect the residential curbside. It would have minimum service levels, maybe 3. The rate multiplier between the levels, what would that be? In some communities, it's 80% of the small rate. It's just some communities do the 80% on each level, each service level up. So it's, those are the conversations we're having right now. To charge for excess was also a recommendation. And that means when the hauler goes to collect someone's trash, if there's extra, then that they actually charge for it. They don't just say, hey, we'll grab that this time and next time we'll charge it. So making sure that they realize they need to charge for that. Again, trying to change behavior to waste less. As it relates to group accounts, think HOAs. Some of those are managed by an HOA company. and the resident doesn't really have much to say about the contract. However, they may want a smaller cart, and even though they may not realize a savings per se, that to have that choice to have a smaller size. So those are conversations we're having with HOA management companies. And then the rates and the options disclosed, again, as Jen mentioned, making sure that the city, that the rates from the hauling companies are communicated to the city manager's office on an annual basis. And then when someone calls in to ask for service, that they are provided all the options that are available. And so not just, yeah, we can give you trash service and we'll decide which cart you start with. So offering those options at the beginning. And so the status where we are right now is getting community feedback. And that gets me to my last real slide here, and that's the community waste survey. So there's kind of two goals here. One is for us to provide information to the community members, like all the different ways waste is handled in the region, where you can drop things off, where you can recycle things. And then also for us to better, me and the rest of us to understand better what it is that the community is looking for. What are they happy about? What would they like different? How do they feel about volume-based pricing? What do they think about composting? How do they recycle? So just all those kinds of questions, really trying to get feedback and to develop, what is that the community is looking for as we move forward through this conversation. So with that, I will stop. And here is my contact info. Anyone's interested, again, if you're seeing any plastic bags anywhere other than a restaurant or any styrofoam coming out of a restaurant, please let me know so we can have a conversation. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Alicia, and thank you so much, Jen. So helpful. This is just a really, important topic. And Jen, thank you for sharing your successes over the years, especially it's so timely given the foundation and the ways in which we're looking to this as a really exciting strategy for increasing residential recycling rates. Something too that I'll just add in, another component of the volume-based pricing or pay-as-you-throw, why it stands to be an important kind of step towards, ongoing behaviors that really reduce the amount of either recyclables that are landfilled or organic or food waste that's landfilled, is it just sets up the system for people to be saving money with that smaller trash bin. And so it really becomes this step towards composting, recycling, and smallest bin is trash. So we have some nice questions in the chat for those that if you still have questions and you want to put them in the chat, I will go through these and then we can do hand raising or other things if people have more questions. So looks like this first one is for Jen, coming from Tim Olganont. Does Summit County have a program for dropping off gardening and landscaping waste, example, branches, imagining that people are wanting to keep their large bins for that seasonal need?
Right. It's a good question. We actually have a separate slash program in Summit County, like a chipping program through our CSU extension office. And that is a free program funded, I don't know, some sort of federal grant through the CSU extension, which takes care of a lot. In terms of yard waste, we do not have a separate program. People can drop it off up at the scrap, which is the landfill and recycling. There is a small fee, like a $10 fee, but we don't have any curbside collection. I do believe that we have less yard waste, like grass trimmings, than you all would in Steamboat, because I know we have less than even over in Eagle County. Our elevation is obviously a lot higher than yours, but I wish we had that program. I want to do more, but we have probably less and a shorter growing season than you guys do.
Great. That's a great question. Coming from Ryan Messenger, does the pay-as-you-throw model impact recycling quality? As in, are people more likely to put non-recyclables in recycling with limited trash bin sizes? So contamination question.
For me also?
Yeah, for you,
cool.
Jen.
That is definitely the $1 million question. I believe that it will affect our contamination. Fortunately, we haven't seen that yet. I think, especially in those homeowners associations, right? Like anytime you have a shared enclosure, I think that really opens you up for more, whether it's illegal dumping or just visitors. Again, we are very fortunate that we haven't seen it yet, but we have a lot of mitigation strategies in place. My goal is not to reduce contamination. Our contamination, I think, is 12%. I would have to look, but it's very low. I think it will increase. My goal is to like keep it steady, and not have it increase. My goal is not to decrease it. So I think it's a real concern, but I think it's possible to get people to recycle, even if they're visiting here, but it's a possibility.
It's a very low contamination rate, 12%.
It is very low,
Yeah.
surprisingly low. So for a
Yeah.
resort community. So, I mean, I personally would be satisfied even if it went up to a little bit higher than that. Let's keep it below, 18%.
Yeah,
But we'll see. Yeah.
that's great. Some questions from Scott Kalman. Bears, that is something that is of consideration and has been of consideration during the discussions about bin size. Scott, I actually see you put your camera on too, so you're welcome to ask these questions.
Okay. Just wondering what, if any, bear block ordinances are in Summit County and how it affects pay-as-you-throw programs. Our hang up here has been that we can't seem to find bear block for the smaller bins. And we have an ordinance, at least in the city, that requires that we have that in place.
Yeah, I think that's a real concern. So we don't have any bear ordinances in Summit County. There are certainly areas of Summit that have a real bear problem, and I imagine as our climate warms, it's going to become a bigger issue. But we don't have any bear-proof ordinances. We do require, it's a requirement of every hauler in the ordinance that they must offer a bear-proof option in every single size. All the haulers agreed to that. I mean, obviously it's in the ordinance, they had to. But we did have a problem with one hauler who really said they couldn't get those bins. But they have figured it out, and those bins exist. They are expensive for the haulers, like if they're going to rent them to their customers. But they absolutely exist, and every single one of our haulers has them. So we handle it like from the fee side, we give the haulers the flexibility to charge residents a separate fee for bear-proof bins. It would be different in Steamboat. It would have to be built into your fees, like it is now. I know Vail has a bear-proof ordinance and they have pay-as-you-throw, so they work in tandem. But that's what I know for Summit. Those bins exist, Scott. They have them.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great to hear. Would you mind, can you link us up with some information about that?
Yeah.
Get that over to Michelle and Caitlin.
I can try. It's
super
through the
helpful.
haulers, like Waste Management.
Okay.
So
Okay, well, that's great to know. And then my other question, how does the mill levy support the pay-as-you-throw programs? Is that where some of that
Yeah.
grant funding is coming from? And
yes.
and I think that's a pretty substantial amount of money. I can't remember what they said, but just wondering how it supports this program.
Yeah. So I would say the mill levy is supporting the rollout of this program. Once we're into full implementation, like in Frisco and Breck, the idea is that there are really no more costs on us, like as a government, as a nonprofit. But we're very much still in the rollout for unincorporated Summit County. So yeah, it's the education and outreach costs, the fees that we're helping like pay for those hauler exchange fees when they existed. It is the grants that you're talking about. We have, just to give you an idea, we have a couple $100,000, like $200,000 in a bucket for homeowners associations. So, I mean, there is a limit. So I said, yeah, 10K per HOA, but I mean, there's only so many of those that we can do. And then I think those are the major fees. So once we get past implementation, then the mill levy will just go back to supporting everything else that we do, like reducing contamination, talking about recycling guidelines, like everything else, just to keep everything, running and that we're already doing. So it's just during, I would say, about a two-year period. And I'm happy to share budgets with you guys too. Yeah.
And then, sorry, hopefully you're not dominating the questions, but do all the haulers do weekly pickup, or is there any other schedule type of schedule?
So the ordinance, that's a great question. The ordinance applies to weekly pickups, and then by the requirement in the ordinance is biweekly recycling, which is what we've always done in Summit County. There was a point in the ordinance discussions with the hauler where we wanted to require, like, you want to make recycling as easy as trash. We got a lot of pushback on from the haulers on that. In terms, like, it wasn't feasible for them to do that. I mean, they were gonna have to buy more trucks. There were staffing issues. And so we did compromise on that. And it's my hope that someday we get to the point where there's so much demand that they can justify it. Obviously, their costs were going to be a lot more too. So currently, our ordinance is those 3 bin sizes, and it includes weekly trash and biweekly recycling. However, almost all the haulers offer every other week trash collection. And so there are, like, people still have those same options. I know a lot of people who still have like the medium-sized trash can, and they get their trash picked up every other week. It's just not like, we don't have all these levels in the ordinance. It's just the 3 I talked about with weekly trash service.
All right, thanks. Great information. Appreciate it.
Great. And for those that don't know Scott, Scott is the Director of Environmental Health and Quality here and does a lot of the waste diversion programming for the county too. So thank you, Scott, for the questions. Next, we have a comment from Michael, who lives in the county, and so not the city, is saying that would love to see more information and advertisement about how and what to recycling. This is something that we hear too, is just, you know, increased desire for clarification of what can be recycled. You know, I think the recent expansion of the infrastructure that Apex put in, we can now do 1s through 7s here. Jen, I don't know if that's been something that's been recyclable, I think in Summit, you know, for years, but that's new here in Routt County, and definitely the city is that now 1s through 7. So that's a great comment, and I think always an important opportunity. Suggestion that there should be a once a week ad, public service announcement in the paper about what and how to recycle, especially with so many visitors not knowing how we recycle here in the Valley. So thank you for that comment, Michael, and well said. From Susie Romig, would love to see bear resistant trash cans required in the county. Jen, on the, you know, not having those bear ordinances, is that something that you just see, you know, increasing as a pest and kind of disruptor to the system? Are you talking about bear ordinance, or are those kind of coming in more?
We're not. I think currently our jurisdictions are trying to handle that through other waste ordinances, like when you put out your trash. So you're not allowed to have trash out overnight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, which is a challenge for people who, you know, don't live here full time. And so they're often paying for a valet service, right? Where somebody comes and picks it up in the garage, opens their garage. But it's been a discussion, but we haven't actually had any movement on it. We did get some pushback from the haulers that was a barrier, like in them implementing Vail's pay-as-you-throw ordinance, because Vail had that bear proof, and there was an issue with like the amount of time it took to do the locks when it wasn't automated. The driver had to get out, but that was over 10 years ago. And Alicia and I talked about this, and it seems like Steamboat already has that in the city. And so I think my knowledge is outdated and you guys are ahead of us. So maybe a non-issue. And in Summit, I don't know. I'm not sure we need it yet, but we probably will.
Also a comment from Michael about construction and deconstruction waste. I think this is a huge opportunity, you know, of discussion has been, is there an opportunity, for instance, to develop some materials management planning, you know, for large and new construction? Jen, how are you approaching C&D? Is that, you know, what do you have any key successes, wins to share with us there?
Oh, C&D. Okay. Construction waste.
And also just recycling for construction too. So
yes. Okay. So we're doing a lot with construction waste, but it's a slow roll. I would ultimately love to see an ordinance, but I don't have the political will for that with our elected officials at this moment. But some of the things we're doing on the ground, We purchased a roto chopper last year, which is basically just like a really fancy grinder. And we are grinding pallets and slash. Like some of that's going to the compost, but the pallets have not been going into the compost. So we are creating mulch and coloring it. And it's a really, really nice product. And so we're using pallets and clean dimensional lumber. For that, we hired a construction waste specialist for Summit County government. And so he hosted a workshop today for contractors, and we're starting to do some software. But yeah, we're really just focusing on the materials that can currently be recycled in Summit County. So it's scrap metal, concrete, we're stockpiling, and then grinding with a contractor who comes on site, and reusing that like in road base and things like that. So concrete, cardboard, scrap metal, and then clean wood being the biggest. So, and we're doing a cost study right now to see how a future ordinance would impact labor costs and other costs for our local contractors. And we're doing that through the state, through C3, and we will have the results of that at the end of the year. I'm happy to share that with you guys.
Great. Yeah, that'd be wonderful. All right, from Wynn Cowman, does the mill levy, this is for Jen, does the mill levy also support the free to residents food waste composting?
Hi, Wynn. Yes, and it does. And I just, while Alicia was speaking, I went and looked up how much roughly that program costs. And I think it's in the ballpark of $100,000. And those are the hauling costs for all those free drop-off sites.
Wow.
So again, it's just having the drop sites. And then our costs, like, I don't know if that's included in the 100K, but they might be like 15K for our staff time to run the program, communicate with the residents, and yeah, give free buckets to people. But the actual hauling costs for those 8 or 10 sites that I mentioned is roughly $100,000 to get it up to the scrap to the compost pad.
Great. That's very helpful. I will say to those on the meeting, Jen has been such an incredible partner to Western Resilience Center and our community over the years, always so happy to share data and information. And it's just so essential to helping kind of our broader Western Slope really continue to move the needle. So really appreciate it. We have one time for this last question again for Jen. Alicia, this is, I think it's just because Jen has this up and running. And Jen, this is from Gail Gary, City Council. What was the rollout of pay as you throw and how was it phased with the rollout that you mentioned and that it was challenging? And then was that primarily due to the cost? So help us understand kind of the phasing and the rollout of pay as you throw. And
right. I'm not sure what I said was challenging, but I mean, I know a few things that were challenging. For us, it would have been nice if everybody if like multiple jurisdictions rolled it out at one time. But during each individual rollout, like Frisco and Breck adopted the ordinance to go into effect on the same date, which would happen to be October 1, 2023. We wanted to give the haulers we gave the haulers almost a year's lead time. They told us they needed at least 6 months. So there was I thought it was actually a very nice rollout period because we wanted to give them a lot of time to be able to order all the bins and like do everything they needed to do for their own. So that was like a year in planning and waiting the haulers to actually like roll it out. And then, like I said, once it was up and running, there was kind of that awkward period for 3 to 6 months where people were getting used to it. Customers were still getting the information. We were getting, some concerning phone calls, but it really worked itself out. And I feel like the program matured probably about 6 months to a year after the effective date, like after it went into effect in Frisco and Breck. So overall, like really, really positive and short timeline when I look back on it.
wonderful. Well, we are at 2:00. I see a great comment here from Galen, talking about the opportunity. So please, I will share this out. Always kind of trying to keep us at the top of the hour. I want to thank Alicia and Jen. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is very exciting that we are considering pay as you throw. It's a proven strategy for increasing residential recycling. Jen, the fact that you're already at 32% municipal solid waste, that's great. So having really great successes, recycling materials that ought to be recycled. Alicia, thank you for sharing the numbers. Municipal solid waste, I believe here is 14 is what we're kind of working forward from. So we really are excited to see this as an opportunity. So again, Alicia has created a survey. Please share it out. The goal is to get information there. And we will keep the conversation going. So thank you everyone for attending. It's a really important conversation, and I hope you have a great day.